Hey everyone, Matt Donner, Chief Academic Officer at Pyramind, here today to talk to you about the concept of passing chords. Today's tip comes to us borrowed from our good friends at Sound on Sound magazine. In particular, the March issue, Bobby Cole wrote up a really simple but very cool article on the concept of passing chords, something I ironically happened to have just been talking about in class that week. So it seemed timely to try and put this to video. So again, this is Sound on Sound magazine, our very good friends. If you don't subscribe to Sound on Sound, you really should, because it's one of among several very good magazines in our industry, but certainly chock full of great information every month. Those guys do a fantastic job. And again, Bobby Cole, thank you to you for this tip. The concept of passing chords. Here we go. So we're going to use Ableton Live today, as you can see, and I've got a little keyboard up on the screen so you can see what I play live. Got a little group of clips based on some scenes here that I've created. They're all based on these chords that Bobby's talking about in the article. Now, you might also ask, what on earth is the concept of passing chords? And the idea is to take some very simple chords, chords that you may maybe you're not that deep into music theory yet, or you're just learning, or you've got sort of simple piano skills and maybe can or cannot pull off some other things, and maybe aren't aware of some of the deeper levels of theory and are not quite sure how to go beyond something that may end up sounding, kind of similar. Maybe it's boring, maybe it's not boring, or maybe you're just looking to kind of spice something up. And so the idea of a passing chord is, if you take a simple chord progression, you look for chords that don't normally live with these chords that you're working with, and you kind of stick them in between two chords, and you literally use them as a passing tone. Think of it as you're trying to cross a stream, and you don't want to get your shoes wet. You have to step on something that's in between, like a passing step or a stone or a rock or something. So this is a way to get from one side to the other with something very interesting in the middle, and it really can add a little flavor to your chord progression. And so going with the chords that Bobby's got here, rightfully he quotes the famous YouTube video from the guys Axis of Awesome, who joke about the 4-chord pop song. And so he offers the 4 chords as a starting point, and I'm going to go ahead and follow him here. So what we're looking at is these 3 chords, and if you zoom in, you'll see that it's G, B, and D. And if you know what theory is, you know that's a G major chord. And if you don't know what a major chord means, it means it's basically a happier sounding chord. And then here we've got D, F sharp, and A, which is now D major. D happens to be a 5th away from G, not 5 of these little horizontal lines. You'd be 7 of those little horizontal lines. Each of those is a half step. But I mean a perfect 5th in terms of music theory, or in terms of musical scale degree. And so here we have E, G, and B, which is an E minor chord, kind of a sadder sounding chord, or a more serious sounding chord. And then after here, you've got C, E, and G, C major. So G major, D major, E minor, C major. Also known as the key of G major. You would call this a 1, 5, 6, 4, which is a 1 chord, a 5 chord, a 6 chord, and then a 4 chord. Basically the chord that's from the 1st, 5th, 6th, and 4th scale degrees of the position. So I'll just give you an idea. There's G, and so that's the 1st scale degree, 2nd scale degree, 3rd, 4th, that's the G major scale. So again, this is G. So you G, A, B, C, D, E, F sharp, and the G. It's important to note that F sharp naturally lives in the key or the scale of G major, which is good for us because there's F sharp, and it's sitting right in our chord, right in the middle of the D major. So we know that that's the right note. So now what we're looking at is G major, D major, E minor, and then C major. That's your 4-chord pop song. And these chords are spelled in what's known as root inversion, which means it's very easy to see 1, 3, 5, a little later in the tip, I'll explain what it is to do inversions of chords and different ways of spelling the chord to make it a little more interesting. For now, we're going to keep it in this version. And this is basically what it ends up sounding like. Now, you've probably already heard a bunch of songs that do that. And if you're looking for songs that are out there, popular, successful, commercially viable songs that use this kind of chord progression, go to YouTube, check out The Axis of Awesome. They do a better job than anyone else could. And it's hilarious to see how many songs they can string together with just this 4-chord sequence. So this is the idea. This is where passing chords come in. You've got these 4 chords. You've heard them before. The Axis of Awesome is making fun of them, but they're still successful, but maybe that's not good enough for you. So what you can do is look for a place in between either the first chord to the second chord, or the second chord to the third chord, or the third chord to the fourth chord. Figure out somewhere in between here where you might want to put a chord to kind of break up this 4-chord monotony and make something interesting. What Bobby suggests in the Sound on Sound article is an interesting chord. He's got it listed as B/D sharp, which is one way to write this chord. That's one way to describe what it is. It's really a B major chord, which is this chord. There's B, there is D sharp, and here is F sharp. So that's B major. Now, you'll notice that it's not in our 4-chord sequence, but we're going to find a place for it. And he's suggesting you put it in between the 5-chord and the 6-chord, or in this case, between D and E, basically between the second and third chords of our 4-chord sequence. Now, that's awesome, and I agree, and I think that that's what we're going to do, and I'm going to show it to you in a second. But I do want to speak for a moment about the naming. There's no one specific way to call a chord. For example, in our 4-chord sequence, I'm calling them a 1, 5, 6, 4 in the key of G major. You could say it's G, D, E, C, all triads of G major. And when we're talking about this passing chord, he's calling it B over D sharp. And basically what it means is that it's a B major chord, except this D sharp is actually down here, or at least that's the bass. So it goes. So instead of putting the B here, we put it up there. So which means the lowest note is D sharp. So it's B major over D sharp as the lowest note. That's one way to say it. I would describe it as just B major first inversion. That's what I would call it. All of those ways are right. They're all right ways to call it. And it's up to you to pick a naming scheme that you like to work with. And as you're working with other people, you'll find that they have different ways that they like to call different chords. And so what we're going to do is basically create that chord. And if you look at this clip, which is the piano clip on the second scene here, you can see that this chord is now broken into 2. And just like Bobby suggests, you've got the D sharp in the bass, F sharp in the middle, and B up top. So this D chord became this B chord. One of the reasons why this is really thought of as a passing chord is both because it's in between what was this chord and this chord. In other words, we pass from here over here to here. That's one reason. But the other reason is to look within the notes of the chords. Now, one of the interesting things about taking this chord and spelling it this way is that if we had it spelled this way with the B in the bass, it wouldn't be nearly as obvious. Notice this chronological motion. So you end up, as you go from GBD to D major, the D stays the same, but then in this B, all of a sudden we have a D sharp and then an E. So you end up with some really nice chromatic motion. And with the B down here, it's a little hard to tell that you also have a little bit of nice, not really chromatic motion, but close motion. So from the A to the B, as opposed to from the A to the B down here. And then of course F sharp stays the same for these 2 notes and then goes here for this note. And so if I just play this clip, it sounds like this. which I think gives it a nice kind of a classical feel. And surprisingly, this could work for someone doing piano-based hip-hop that maybe wanted to call out to a more traditional feel, maybe like a 50s, 60s kind of a sound, which of course a lot of that music and early Beatles and such emulated some of the earlier composers like Beethoven, Mozart and such, and they would use voicings and passing chords just like this. So what I've done is I set this to a little beat, and let me get this drum loop started, and then I'll introduce some of the other sounds. And then you can hear the difference between the simple 4-chord progression, and then this is the 4-chord progression, and then the now 5-chord with passing tone or passing chord progression. So here's the basic. As you can hear, I took a little bit of liberty with the drums and bass to make it a little more interesting. And in Bobby's article here, he does list out, play this chord 4 times, play this other chord 4 times. I broke with that just because as soon as I heard this 4-chord progression, I started and threw in that passing chord. It kind of made me feel like this. And this is exactly what this stuff is meant to do. It's meant to give you an idea and inspiration and have you turn it into a song. So again, here's the basic, and then in the middle, when I switch to scene 2 here, you'll hear the passing chord. It'll be very obvious when it happens. And yeah, I agree. I think it makes the progression much more interesting. It creates a nice little break in the rhythmic motion here, creates this really nice chromatic motion here, just note, up a note, up a note, and creates this really interesting and cool tension here that gets resolved here in a sad chord, which is interesting. A lot of times you'll hear tension, and then the chord after it will be a major chord giving resolution. But this is more like tension and then resolution, but not happy about it, which I think is a really cool move. And so now if we took this one step further, you can see over here, we broke up this C chord at the end. Now I haven't changed it. You can see this is still C. Okay, this is still C, E, G, and this is still C, E, G. So this hasn't changed necessarily, but this is a really good opportunity to show not just passing chords, but timing and aligning your chords with your drums to keep, again, things interesting. So this is the exact same progression as this, with the only exception that the C chord got broken so that I can have this other chord here not play at the 2-4, but at the 2-4 and just a little bit of a 16th note upbeat there. So you'll hear this pretty plainly when the drums kick in. So let's check out this third scene. Okay, so you could hear the second time around with the bass. The bass is doing something different in its first run to its second run. And in its second run, you can see it's got a little extra rhythmic activity over here, which makes it interesting, so that we hear the chord progression twice. We hear this chord progression twice, but we only hear this bass progression once over the same set of bars. So it makes it feel like the phrase is much longer than it really is. And that's, again, part of this whole point, is to take a simple set of chords or a simple phrase and extend it and make it interesting by just adding a few little pieces of spice in here. And so now this fourth rendition takes the last C chord, which was broken in 2, and now it's actually broken in 3. And now you'll notice that this half of the C chord is now not only 2 chords, it's a different chord. This is now B minor. Now, you remember this B major. See how it has B, D sharp, and F sharp? But see over here where we have B, D, and F sharp. And that's a big difference. Before we had, and now we have, It's one of those things where there's a deeper reason as to why this works, and I don't want to go into it right now, but it relates a lot to the concept of dominance. That's why this creates so much tension. And as you hear, this is not nearly as tense, even though they're both B chords. Let's check it out. Let's see what it sounds like here. So as you can hear, this B sounds a whole lot different than that B, and especially in place of where it comes from and where it goes to. Now this is a passing chord. It's got a nice little chromatic motion in two places here, and it's just a way to break up the monotony of 4 chords, because we had 4 and now we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 chords. Really just by making this, using this B chord major over here and minor over here. Okay, so that's the basics of what this passing chord tip is really all about. What I do want to do, I want to leave you with one concept before we go away on to the next one, is that if you take a look at this clip is the exact same chord structure as this clip. But if you notice, this one has this sort of really big flowy curve. We start low, we go high, we go higher, we go highest, down a little bit, and then up to the middle, and then back down. You can visually see how the notes are jumping from way down here to way up there. That's a pretty big spectrum of notes to cover. Now, if we look at this guy, you can see all the voices are really kind of in the same register. It feels like it goes across more like a horizontal line, like all the energy is in this territory. We only go from here up to there. It's a much smaller jump. Now this is the concept of inversions or voice leading. Remember earlier I said, he's calling this chord here B over D sharp, and I would call it B major first inversion. And the idea behind inversions is that you play chords in ways where your fingers don't have to do so much work. Originally it was G up to D. Well, that fifth is a big area to jump for your thumb. You have to really move your hand across the keyboard a lot. What I would do is choose, instead of this G, I would choose this G, because you'll notice from here, it's a hop, skip, and a jump to get over to D. This is still G, B, D, and this is still D, F sharp, A. It's just because I inverted which note is on the bottom and which note is on the top, it's much easier for my hands to play the chords without having to also figure out how far left and right to jump up and down the piano. So by using inversions, you create much simpler ways of getting your chords expressed. So now we would have this guy, which is G major, D major, B major, E minor, C major, or eventually, which would be B minor now, not B major, B minor, and then C, and then back again. And it sounds, I'll just solo it here. So I'll leave it to you as to which one you like better. There's no rhyme or reason as to why you might do one or the other than you like it better. I have a whole theory on chord inversions and why they sound the way they sound and why you might want to use them and when, but that's definitely for another day. Suffice to say, what I'll do is I'll go back and forth between these two rows. I'll go back and forth with the scene with the blocky chord motion and then to the smooth chord motion. Let me get solo off and put this down here a little bit. Yeah, that should work out just fine. So let's hit play. So I don't know which one you like better. I'd love to hear your thoughts on the matter, whether you like it better with the sort of more dramatic, big jumps, big, bulky, kind of hard to move your hands around the piano function, or whether you liked it kind of in and tight and smooth and all the voices in together. Again, there's no rules as to which one makes more sense when. I have my set of rules at least, but there's no global rules. So let me know your thoughts. Which one do you think you like better? And if you want to know more, obviously check us out. And look for my music theory with Ableton class now being offered at Pyramind Training in our online division. If you're an Ableton user and want to know more about Ableton theory, this would be the class for you to take. Love to hear from you. Hope to check you out soon. And in the meantime, I'll let this play out and fade out, and we'll have a little old school fun here.
When I first came to Pyramind, I had searched the forums and I had searched online, I had read magazines, I had talked with people, but it wasn't enough. What I needed to do was I needed to watch someone mix, start from scratch, and make their way up to a professional project.
I take them through all the steps and break it down piece by piece. I want them to understand how sound interacts in the environment, number one. Number two, I want them to understand how instruments behave in a room, how to capture those instruments. Here's a microphone. What does a microphone go to? Here it is in a real-world environment. Now let's go back to the classroom and dissect that.
After a certain amount of time within the core program, you have access to the studios, right? And you have access to the microphones. And you have access to just bring in whoever you want and record. The first two Tumbleweed Wanderers EPs, they were both completely tracked here.
I brought my band in, we set up drums, did overdubs, had other Pyramind students on board as engineers, and we had a really, really good time tracking those songs.
There's a lot of hands-on experience. You get to see bands get recorded, you get to be involved with setting up the mics, the miking techniques, the compressors, how everything in a studio flows. It's good to have that knowledge and the hands-on experience with the professionals that have done that kind of work.
There's no shortage to what you can do. It's a supportive environment that says, here is a space where you can be creative and mess up, and not only will we not judge you for messing up, we'll applaud you in those efforts.